Hello there. I am on top of a fireplace. So, welcome everybody to episode 9 of Firefly Chats. As you notice, my legs are moving. Please ignore that. But today's topic I want to talk about an interesting topic. I want to talk about neurodivergence. Ooh, scary. I want to talk about how neurodivergence have a tendency to affect people in different, more interesting ways. And I want to tell you guys how neurodivergence affects me personally. Now, neurodivergence can be neurodivergence is just I'm using that term instead of things like autism, ADHD, ADD, DID, and stuff like that, is because neurodivergent is more of a blanket term for any ways that your neurons diverge from the normal. So to explain it, I'm not a scientist, so this is going to be super silly, but how neurodivergence works is the fact that when you're born and in the womb and all that stuff, sometimes the ways that your neuron forms start to diverge from the normal structure of your neurons, causing more oddities to the ways that your mind processes information, thinks about information, and perceives information and stuff like that. For example, a normal person will look at a situation and go, okay, I should settle it this way. But a neurodivergent person will look at it and think about it on a much more different scale. They'll start overthinking things and start thinking about situations differently. One of the most typical ways that people portray neurodivergent people is thinking of them as people who take things extremely literally. And yeah, there is neurodivergent people who are like that. People who take everything that you say literally. That will take everything you say absolutely 100% to the T literally. But there are also neurodivergent people who do the opposite. They can't take things literally. They think everything's a joke and stuff like that. And I just want to say that we're out of the age of neurotypical people. You know, back in the day, Back in the day, I sound so old. Neurodivergence was just called little Timmy's a moron who likes hitting his head against the wall. We should ship that person off because clearly there's something wrong with them. Neurodivergence wasn't studied as much back then. Science wasn't as developed as it is now, and now that it is more developed, we can be more aware of how to treat people who aren't neurotypical, and I believe that we can be more aware of how to properly treat these people. I just want to say that for neurotypical people, if you are a neurotypical person and you have a friend that's neurodivergent and you don't understand them as a person, try to start in a way thinking, what are the different ways that I can interpret this information rather than what is meant to be interpreted? Look at a situation and go, okay, this is how it's supposed to be interpreted, but try to think of the other ways that someone can interpret it. Try to think of indirect ways, strange ways, weird ways, how you would say wrong ways to interpret information, and understand that that's how a neurodivergent person sees the world. You can always be more aware, and you can always be more knowledgeable of how to properly treat your neurodivergent friends. Thank you for coming to today's Firefly Chat. Bye!